Welcome to the Seoul Patch Podcast, the podcast where three American expats explore different topics related to living and working in South Korea. With a combined 45 years of living experience in Asia, there are plenty of stories to tell. So, pop in your headphones and make yourself comfortable. It's time for the Seoul Patch Podcast.
My tainted perception distorts, my true meaning is blurred. I am lost to the echoes of whisper and speaking a matter inventive and meaning.
I just want to welcome our guests, Jake and Nick, to the podcast. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. I know that I reached out to some teachers and asked them to share some of their, we'll say, less than desirable Hagwon experiences. As anyone who's searched the internet and looked at Dave's ESL Cafe knows that there are some bad experiences out there, and people don't know their rights. They don't know what you're supposed to receive insofar as benefits and things like that. And so a lot of times we learn those things after the fact, when it's too late. And so this is kind of a service to those teachers who are out there looking to come over to Korea, what to look out for, what are the red flags. So Jake, why don't you just give us a quick rundown, like when did you first arrive in Korea? Like how did you find out about teaching in Korea, by the way? Like what was your initiation?
Well, I graduated university in 2010, and I was living with my parents after that. I went to school in New York and moved back to we'll just say a Midwestern state, living with my parents, and it was okay, but I really didn't like living in my Midwestern state. And a friend from university posted like, "Oh, hey, does anybody want to come teach in Korea?" And then I actually, at that point, was like, "Wait, is it South or North Korea?" I had no clue.
Mine was, I went to Thailand the first time, and mine was it Taiwan or Thailand? Where am I going? Like on the plane, I didn't know, which country I was heading to. Yeah.
But, I saw that. I was like, why not? And told her I'm interested, did a phone interview. And then after that, I started reading about where I was going, about Soju, about how to ask where the bathroom's at and important stuff. My Korean's pretty much stayed at that level. But
welcome to my world.
Yeah. It's
So does that mean that you started to work at the place where your friend was working as well then?
Yeah, I mean, it was the same school. She worked down the street at the elementary division, and I worked at the middle school one.
Okay.
And it was a great job. I really liked it. The boss was really kind, accommodating, made sure we were comfortable. And yeah, so I'd stayed at that job from 2011 to 2014, 13, and it was great.
Oh, wow. So that was a Hagwon job, but you were teaching basically middle school kids?
Middle school, and then they merged the two schools,
mm-hmm.
and I started teaching elementary too, which is much more fun than middle school students.
Oh yeah, okay.
Hardcore. Have you ever taught middle school students?
I've never taught them, but when I worked in America in Chicago, I worked on creating education plans for teachers and things like this. And I know exactly what you're talking about. Like the behavioral issues, they don't start to bloom yet. You have kind of like, it's just more fun in general.
Well, no, maybe in America, in Korea, this is where they become tired. They're entering hell. And
that's what I mean. Go ahead.
But yeah, behavioral issues too, because like the younger ones, right, would be. I got jumped by two of them in a class. I walk into the classroom and the two biggest kids wearing their North Face puffy coats jumped me and tried to beat me up.
Wait, as a joke or?
I think, I'm pretty relaxed as a teacher, so I think they thought it would be funny. But I was kind of annoyed, but I just pushed them against the wall. And then at the beginning of class, I said, these guys punch like little girls. because they were punching me in like the least effective way, and then I made fun of them in front of the class because they're bullies. They can take it. They deserve it. But no, I mean, that first job was great, and I was there for 2 years. The only reason I left was because my boss was transferring to another branch in another city, and we had a lot of oral agreements. And like, you know, of course, like I think we all know now, make sure everything's in the contract. But
the oral agreement is worth as much as the paper it's written on.
But when you have a boss like I did, I trusted that he would do it. And he's like, I can't keep any of those agreements. So, and he's like, the new woman, like we knew her, she already worked there. She's like, she's not going to keep them. And I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to find a new job? And he wrote me the most wonderful letter of recommendation. And I was able to find a really good job in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then
this was like at the end of your contract though? You
Yeah, 2 weeks before the end of my contract.
Oh,
he was
nice.
just like,
okay.
Hey, I can't, I'm moving. And so he wrote in the recommendation letter, he's like, Jake doesn't need me. I need Jake. So it was really cool. Nice. Yeah. And then
this is a good contrast considering we're going to be talking about like bad stories, to start with something so positive at the beginning.
It is. But that's kind of what kept my faith. I was like, this isn't a terrible place to work. You just got to find the right company to work with.
So, and also you got, maybe you were lulled into a little bit of a false sense of security, whereas your first job was so positive, you just kind of assumed like they all operate that way, or had you run into other teachers that had much different experiences before that?
I mean, I had an idea that some places were terrible. Okay. But and even then, the second place I worked at wasn't terrible. It was a huge chain, and it was in Gangnam, and I never had to worry about pay. It was just management is where when I got there, the lady who hired me, apparently she was a terrible principal, and everybody was talking trash about her, but I only knew her for like a month. And then by the end of that month, then we got Karen, I'll call her Karen, as the principal.
Okay. And that's not her real name. Okay.
No, but it kind of suits her.
Oh, she's a Karen. I see what you mean. Yeah,
she is a Karen. Okay. She's a Karen.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I'll say, like, right off the bat, I didn't mind her. She did class observations, and I was the only teacher she didn't rip apart. She was just like, you're doing good. And it's like, I'm a high energy teacher. I go up there, I make jokes, and I'm a heavy guy, but I jump around and have a good time. And she was like, that was great. But all the other teachers, she was nitpicking the smallest little things apart and really not being kind to them, right? But initially, I had no problems with her, and that was kind of made me feel good, made me feel confident. But
so, all right. So you walk into a job. So you have a friend from university, is that right? That kind of gives you a lead on a job. You grab it. You go over there. You're looking for. I mean, 2010. That's kind of a rough time. That's like post. We're still kind of in the recession, right? At that time.
Well, I got here 2011.
Okay.
Right. So I graduated 2010, and then like the next year, right? I had only spent like 8 months at home, and the next year I was on the path to the rest of my life.
The accidental career, as we like to call this. Just 1 year in Asia. It turns into a couple decades, And so those first couple of jobs were pretty good. When do things go sideways for you? Like what's the
well, I mean, and that first, like I said, the second job was good, but I ended up having regular arguments with my boss, and it was hilarious. I mean, first of all, she and I'll tell kind of the fun part of the story of that place was just she hired, and this was all nepotism, a vice principal. We'll call her Stacy because that kind of suits her. But apparently her father was a big, very well-connected person, and she was hired. She came from, she was living in the States with her mom going to university. Yeah, I think it's okay to say, but it was pretty obvious she had no clue what she was doing. And that's fine. Like, I don't mind if you're learning on the job. That's how I started. I had no clue how to teach ESL until like I got here and learned. But, you know, she did her classroom observation with me and was just like, I just want you to know, Jake, like, this is my first vice principal job. So let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. And I was like, this girl, she's going to be good. She sounds like she's open. But I think the Karen principal told her, don't be their friends. Don't be kind. I think because like it was literally a day and night shift. Like one day she was nice. The next day we came in and she just started like yelling at us for no reason. Right. Like, you know, one time she started berating my coworker, whose name was Justin, but she called him Jake. She couldn't get us right. She'd either call me Justin or she'd actually call me Jack. She didn't know my name for the time she worked there, but she started yelling at him and it ended up being like absolutely nothing because she was like, where are the reports? Where are the reports? And she was looking at the page where the reports for the next week would be. Right. Oh. Or one time
she was yelling at you guys for something that was her mistake, basically.
Yeah. And I think she thought like she was being a strong manager by getting upset, but she was just really turning us off to her. Like another time she made a sign-in sheet for parents to sign for their kids. Like, yes, my kid read the book. My kid read the book. Right. Just to kind of keep everybody accountable. And she spelled sign wrong. Right. She, instead of SIGN, she spelled it SING. It's an easy mistake to make, especially if English is your second language.
But it's also just super frustrating because like that's literally what we're here for, is to like go over things and edit things and make sure that things are correct, and nothing drives me crazier.
Oh, I mean, of course, but we caught it, and that was the good thing. Is like, hey, Stacy, like, look at this. Like, you made a mistake. Like, we should change that so that when you send it home to these Gangnam parents, they'll know the difference, right? But she's like, we knew she made this sheet, and she's like, oh my God, someone hacked into my computer and changed it.
Oh boy.
Someone's trying to sabotage me.
Like changing the word sign to sing. Yeah, that's what I would do if I was a hacker.
Burn. Wow, it really gotcha. You know,
foiled. But it just went on like that for 3 months, and then eventually she got fired. But they didn't replace the vice principal. It just meant Karen got more involved with our work, and you know. I was coming from Haebangchon, so it was like a 30-minute bus ride to Gangnam where I worked. And sometimes you get on. I have a IBS. Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm sitting on the bus and I'm like, I gotta go. So one day I got off the bus and got back on the bus, and I was about 5 minutes late. Yeah. And this woman, Karen, was just like, I get there and they're like, oh, Karen wants to see you. And I'm, what? So I go in there and she's like, why were you late? I said, you really want to know?
Yeah, tell her the truth, man. Just the gritty details. Yeah.
This is unacceptable. And I said, I was pooping. And she's like, why would you tell me that? She literally said, like, why would you tell me that? I said, you wanted to know. Like, I'm an adult. Like, if I'm 5 minutes late once a month because I'm pooping, like, can't you just trust? So there was just a lot of micromanagement, and you know, I had my fights with her, but we had our moments too. Okay, this isn't the worst boss, but I'll go into the one thing that kind of was nice. They were remodeling the whole building and giving it a makeover, and she wanted to put a quote in the stairwell, right? To kind of like an inspirational quote, so that when the children are walking up the stairwell, they can be inspired. And me and my coworker were like, what if, like, and she tasked the teachers with finding the quote, right? Yeah. And we're like, what if we got a nice sounding quote by a terrible person and attribute it to a good person?
Oh
right?
God, if you guys chose Hitler, I'm going to be okay.
What ended up being written on the wall, and it's still there. Someone I know works in that building. It's no longer a school, but it's still in that stairwell. And it's faith moves mountains, but knowledge moves them into the right place. Maya Angelou.
Oh, okay.
But really, it's Joseph Goebbels, Nazi propagandist. Yeah.
You guys up the ante right there, I think. You know what I mean? Like
just trolling your boss there.
Yeah.
But I know someone that works in that building, not as a teacher. It's a different company now. But I found out they worked there. I was like, is this still in the stairwell? And it's still there. So we feel pretty good about that.
Oh man. All right. I'm not you've made me now. I'm a little bit sympathetic to Karen, but no, I'm joking. But so what is her like? You said she's a micromanager. Like what can you give me some like some more specific examples of where you think like if she'd have just backed off, things would have run like much more smoothly? Are there some examples like that?
Well, there was one teacher who was doing the best he could with his kindergarten classes, because this was a Hagwon / kindergarten, and she basically told him he was a terrible teacher, and like he's dealing with kindergartners, and it's really difficult when they're really young. He had the youngest class, and just kind of tore him apart and made him feel bad. One night, a girl accidentally left a space heater on in a classroom, which was an accident. It was the middle of winter, and that room can only be heated by a space heater. And she came in the morning and said, someone left the space heater on in the classroom. You could have burned the whole building down. And that's not true, because it was a waste of electricity. That's what she was mad about.
Right.
But she said we could have burned the whole building down. Now, I was already on my way out, so I was just like, I did it. And she's like, you could have set the whole building on fire. The circuit breaker would have lit on fire. And I said, no, that's what a circuit breaker is for, so that nothing catches on fire.
Right.
It just went on like that. She would yell at me because like at one point the school was losing students and I was really hungry. So I was eating dinner. I was going to leave in an hour. I had no classes. I'd finished all my work for the week. So I had some dinner in a classroom, and she started yelling at me for eating dinner. She's like, you're not allowed to eat dinner here. That is not in your contract. I said, I have nothing to do. Like, we don't have students for me to be working right now. So
do you think I guess I'm just wondering, like, do you think she like read a book about like management or how to, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if you guys understand.
I think maybe there's and I love Korea and I love its culture, but I think that there is a culture of, I don't know what it's called in Korean, but it's sort of the boss being heavy-handed and sort of keeping everybody in line through kind of like fear. And I think that's just kind of what she was into. But the school closed, and she ended up just becoming a math teacher at one of the kindergartens.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah. But it was nuts. But like I said, I left that job. I would have stayed because it was a big company, safe financially, and but I wanted to get my severance because I had to pay my dad back for key money. He helped me out with my key money in the place that I was living in. And I was like, you know what? I can go find a new job. I would like to try something else. And so my friend, see, this is where I'll move into now the worst of it.
Oh,
right?
okay.
This is
because this doesn't sound so bad. This kind of sounds
honestly,
kind of
it was like
right
sport for me to just mess with Karen. It was fun. Okay. I really liked arguing with her. It was fun for me.
All right.
But my buddy, he was the head teacher at another school, and it was a government supplemented. The government supplemented this school. It was in a not very fortunate neighborhood. So I went from Gangnam to one of the poorest neighborhoods in Seoul, and he was the head teacher. He's like, it's a great job. We have this and that. And I was like, all right. And my friend is a good guy. So I was like, oh, let me go work here. And I got a pretty good deal. I forewent the flight ticket for a higher salary because I was like, I can just pay for a ticket myself. I'd rather just get more money a month. And it ended up being more than a flight ticket if I had worked the whole year. But I get there and it's a pretty good job. We have our own classrooms. We're not like running around to classrooms. We have our own classrooms that we teach in, and the kids were great. You could tell a lot of them were real good kids, right? But the concerns came after my first month. Like, all the coworkers, like we all went out to go drinking afterwards at like the local drinking spot near the school. And we're sitting there and there's me and another new guy, right? And we're sitting there and we hear our coworkers go like, oh yeah, they didn't get paid. We got paid. And we're like, oh. So we had no problems, but like, wait, why didn't you guys get paid? We got paid. And like, we'll say Mr. Chad, the owner, the principal, was he told them that he wanted to make a good impression on us.
By paying you?
Okay.
Yeah. So he told our coworkers, I didn't pay you, but I want to make sure that they have a good impression of our school, so I paid them. You can already feel
that's the basics. That's not how you make a good impression. That's just what you do.
He ended up making a bad impression because I'm seeing how he's treating someone who's been here, right?
That's like saying I wanted to make a good impression, so I didn't punch you in the face.
Yeah,
you know exactly. What I mean? It's just those are.
But did punch the other guys,
but I did punch it. Well, of course, yeah, because I don't care about them. I mean, I don't understand. Like, so the other people were supposed to get paid, the other teachers, but they just didn't get their salary that month, or it was late.
Well, they got it later in the month, much later. But yeah, it was really shady, and so it keeps going on, and that was the last time I was paid on time, and it's frustrating, especially because I'm gonna be the first to say I'm not very good at saving money, so it's not like I just had like stacks of money for a rainy day. Sure. And it was maybe in like the end of my second month, I was gonna go on a trip to Japan for the weekend with my then girlfriend, now wife, and I wanted to have cash on hand. I'm not going to Japan like on a credit card. Like I'm not gonna like rely on that. Right. So I call up the principal, this guy, Mr. Chad, and I'm like, hey, I need my paycheck. I'm going on a trip. Like, you owe me money. And he's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And that's the thing, is the guy was always smiling, always completely like everything's fine. Like he kind of had like a politician vibe to him. Right. Like everything's great, but everything coming out of his mouth was shit. And he basically like, I'm so sorry. And he gave me like $700 out of my paycheck ahead, right? And I was like, okay, thanks. And then every month after that, it just kept going on. Like at one point, another coworker was leaving, and he found out he was having trouble with his pension. The boss, he hadn't been paying his pension, his side of the pension. He's been deducting pension, but he hasn't been paying pension. And so this guy's leaving. He's like, I want my pension. So the principal said, okay, how about this? I will pay you your pension. And then later when I catch up paying all the pensions, you pay me back, right? You can get the pension and pay me back, right? Which is like, for my buddy, he's like, all right, you're just going to give me cash. I'm good. I'm out. Right. So that's good for my buddy, but not good for me. I'm sitting there not getting paid on time, dealing with like these issues. So finally, like it was right before I decided to put in my resignation. It's payday, and he takes us out for hueshik, like a school dinner, and we're all eating beef. And I'm like, so does this mean our money's coming? Does this mean everything's good again? And at the dinner, he's just like, I'm sorry, but it's going to be late again. I was like, well, why are you feeding us? Like, we don't want this. This isn't consolation for us. So,
did he ever give you any reasons as to why it was late?
I think he was just terrible. Well, they also were opening up a second branch, and I think they drained a bunch of money, but I think he was just generally terrible with managing it. And I think he got in the hole with like these pension issues, and just I don't think he used money. And also, like, he was stupid enough to pay me way more than he needed to be paying me in lieu of a flight ticket. Like I think he was more about showing that he was a good guy than he was being a good guy. So he liked the kind of short-term gratification of making you happy. Like, I'm going to give you X amount of dollars, and isn't it great? And then when it comes time to
cough up the money, he finds himself like overextended, and so he has to apologize and play catch up, and that can kind of spiral out of control on someone, I imagine. What about students? Were you guys bleeding students? Were there enough?
I mean,
students?
As far as I could tell, the school was doing very fine with students.
Okay.
And like I said, it was run through a public government center, and they had like their own wing of the center.
Oh, okay, okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
It was subsidized by the government because it was a poor neighborhood, and they wanted to give a reasonable
Incentives,
price, for students to get an English education, because it's really expensive here to send your kid to a Hagwon.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
So, but that was the other weird part. It's like you'd figure there'd be more accountability if money was coming from the government, but there wasn't, and. Yeah, I mean, I just kind of had it. I had another friend tell me that I could maybe get a job at after school teaching. He had his boss.
That's another, And I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just want to make sure we get this, like, because this is a common thing that I think, a red flag that teachers need to look out for. Were you hired on as a contract worker, or were you getting the pension?
For after school?
Not
the government one. No, E2. It was a legitimate E2 job. It was everything about that was, not contract worker. I was getting pension, which now I know means that you have the right job. If you're getting pension, you're in E2.
And you're also getting healthcare, though. You've got the NHI.
Healthcare. All of that was pretty well sorted. But
it's just the pay.
Yeah. But then, so I give him the resignation, right? And I still don't have a job to like go to. And I ended up spending kind of a month doing odd jobs. But I just told him on my letter of release, I also included, I will pay the final thing. I had him sign it, right? I will pay you your final paycheck on this date, right? I gave it to him. He signed it. We got the letter of release. Everything's pretty solid. And also, I should say, for anybody who's curious, you can find letters of release formats online, right? And you handing your boss the letter of release is sometimes easier than getting them to make you one. So just sign here, and we're good, right? Okay. So yeah, I stopped with that guy, and then I ended up getting a good after school job, but I still had not been getting my final paycheck. He didn't follow through on that. I guess I wasn't surprised. So like, I'm sending him messages and I'm like, hey, where's my money? Like, where is this money? And he's like, I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you. Keeps pushing it a week. And finally I'm like, are you a liar? Because you said this last week. Are you a liar? And he's just like, really? Then he finally like stops with his like smiley attitude, and we're doing text, but you can kind of get the tone. He's just like, why are you giving me such a hard time? I helped you when you went to Japan. I was just like, you didn't help me. You owed me money. I helped you.
You gave me the money you owed me. Yeah.
And he ended up paying my final payment about a month and a half later. Okay. And I was about as good as to like just close the book on this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm done with it.
Did you know about MOEL or like labor board stuff at that time?
I did, but I don't think I was stressed out about it enough to like approach the labor board, right? And it honestly was just like, all right, he eventually got me my money. I got a new job. I'm much happier, right? But okay. But then I did go. Oh yeah, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Oh, it just sounds like it sounds like you were more of a victim of like ineptitude as much as malevolence. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sound like these people were necessarily out of control egomaniacs. They just might have been over their heads when it comes to management. And unfortunately, you had to bear the brunt of that, of their basically poor management or ineptitude.
Yeah, it does sound much more incompetence than
they were out to get him. I feel like that's pretty common, but it's also like a fairly easy thing to hide behind, because it sounds like this guy is like super happy chipper all the time. But that's
maybe it was just an act.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. For
sure.
It was
because
like I said,
these bosses,
politician.
These bosses like know the laws. They know that they're not supposed to be paying you late. They know what they're supposed to be doing, and then to like sit there and claim that like, I helped you, or it's coming, and like they know what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
he was disregarding the law and keeping a happy face. And you know, if I would have put up with like being paid late, it could have been worse. Because, well, so I'll try to fast track. I know I'm going on a bit long, but after that, I went to an after school job, but still on an E2 visa. And this is a good thing to note too, although I think it's much more difficult to get these jobs without an F visa. But as an E2, the after school programs are usually private or freelance or private contractors, right? So you can't do that with an E2 visa. But it was pretty common. I knew it was common. I knew there was a gray area there, but in 2015, immigration started cracking down on people with these jobs with E2s. I know personally like 4 or 5 people who lost their visas.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
I loved the after school job. It's great. It fit me well. Like you manage yourself, you have a co-teacher and great hours, right? But eventually immigration was like, nah, you can't be doing this on an E2. So they gave me an order of departure, and they're like, we can't, and you're not going to be able to get an E2 visa again. And I was like,
oh no. Okay.
Yeah. So
what did you do? Like, how did you, and you're still here. So
I'm married.
Oh, you got married. You got the F5. Okay.
Well,
nice.
Yeah. Well,
the golden
ticket.
The
green
F6
ticket. And that's the thing is like, we'd been together for a couple years, and I don't think we would have gotten married on our own. We would have just dated forever.
Yeah.
Because marriage is paperwork. I don't know. We don't really care about that. But yeah, so I had to get married, and kind of then my wife started to take my paychecks. I left the country for 2 weeks, came back on a student visa by enrolling at a language course in Seoul. And then my wife received my paychecks while I worked at the school that I was working at. And then eventually the F visa came. And but leading up to that, though, to get the marriage visa, you have to prove that you have enough money. And because I was a contractor, that didn't count towards the money to prove that I have enough money to get married. So
you didn't have like a salary.
It kind of comes down to the mood of the person in immigration too. I found like,
sometimes
they're just like, all right, you can have it, or So, but it sounds like you got the F, and you got your story is one of like I was talking before, ineptitude and kind of perseverance. Like you just kind of
becomes criminal.
Yeah,
I hate to cut you off, but it becomes criminal to this point, because when we were trying to figure out the money situation for me, we looked into my pension, and so kind of as we might have thought, this principal at the school wasn't paying my pension either. I mean, he took the money, but he didn't pay it into the pension. So like we were trying to look like, oh, will I be able to get my pension? I can't claim my pension. But they talked to us like, they know the guy's name at the pension office. Like, we'll say Mr. Kim. That's not his real name. Mr. Kim has a case open right now. And he's done this to pretty much every teacher at that school.
Well, there aren't a lot of people that I don't know that have had that situation happen to them. It's just it's a common thing. I think it comes down to here's a piece of advice for our listeners out there that are thinking about coming to teach in Korea. Do your homework, man. Like there are rights that you have, and you have to, even no matter how nice they are, how much they're smiling at you, how great it looks at the beginning, make sure that you're getting your pension matched by your employer. Make sure that you're on the NHI, or you know what I mean, like getting the healthcare. Those are your rights, even if the school seems to operate really well. I worked for a school at one point where teachers were hiding in the hallway because the Board of Education or Ministry of Education was making sure that they didn't, because we were all contract workers, right? And so, you know, it's a common way for them to save some money. And so, but Jake, I'm so glad that you're still in Korea teaching, and you got it sounds like you got a pretty decent gig going right now, and you're married, and you're not locked up under Incheon Airport.
Not yet.
Not yet. All right.
But I will say the only way I'm ever going to get my pension is if they prosecute him and he goes to prison.
Yeah.
So you can, like you said, you can call the pension office while you're working and make sure things are getting paid on time.
Yeah, right. If they've never heard of you, red flag, you know?
Yeah, and also fun fact for anybody listening, if you do decide to call the pension office, they speak English very easily. There's services that are there for you, because your pension is designed for you, for foreign teaching. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy to call and just check in.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's a real slap in the face when you leave the country and you're expecting to get that money, and then you find out that there's nothing coming. You know, that really sucks. So, unfortunately, a common thing that happens here. Nick, let's pivot to your story. I'm very curious, and maybe you could just, you know, you don't have to start all the way at the beginning, but you know, just what's your, you know, how'd you get to Korea? What was your experience, your negative experience working here?
So I also came in 2011, but most of my experience in teaching in Korea is actually at public school. But when I moved up to Seoul, I moved at like a weird time, so I couldn't get a public job. So I ended up finding a job at a kids cafe for a few months, and that ended up they like
kids cafe.
Yeah,
this is new to me.
So a kids cafe is a
cafe, but with foreigners in it.
No, so a kids
you
cafe
play with
is
the kids. That sounds
for
terrible.
like parents to bring their kids to like socialize and like meet other kids and like play with big things and toys that they can't necessarily have at home.
Okay,
it's like a dog park for kids.
So it, first of all, like I'm very sure that my position there was not kosher, because my contract was through a kindergarten Hagwon that owned this kids cafe. They ended up letting me go because they couldn't afford to keep me because there weren't enough people coming. But they also like lied to me about how much notice they were going to give me about this program and everything. It was not that bad. But I was there for about 6 months, and then I started working at another Hagwon that was teaching kids through movies, and so they'd break up the movies into like small chunks.
Interesting.
Like that was a very small part. Like there was a bunch of other stuff. I replaced a friend that had worked there, and it just was like from the get-go. I don't know why, but the director just from the get-go, she did not like me whatsoever. When I had been in Korea for 6-ish years by that point, and so I knew most of my rights as a worker, and so I knew that like going in, I was like not going to take anything illegal from them. I was going to make sure that I was protected and that they were going to be doing things the proper way.
And nothing pisses them off more than that.
Yes, literally. Yeah. There was one meeting that I ended up having with the director and the owner because I had asked for, we were doing our summer intensives and they had given me this project that I had to do to like make the new textbook for the next movie that we were going to be teaching. And I straight up told my head teacher and the director and the owner that there's no way I could finish this project by the deadline that they gave me unless they were willing to pay me overtime to get it done, because there's no way that I was getting it done in just like my work times. And they took big issue with that. I've also recorded almost every meeting that I've ever had with a boss on my phone, which is something that you, for those who are listening, you can do, is fully legal to do if your voice is also heard on the recording. You don't need to tell the other person that you're recording.
Oh, that's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So any meeting that I had with them, I was already recording with my voice note on my phone, fully out on the table, just like turned upside down. But in this first meeting that we had with them, I went down there with the other foreign teacher that was at the job, and she had been there for longer than me. But for whatever reason, all of their anger was directed at me. I was the person that they were talking to when I was talking about this. They were so mad. The director at one point accused me of not doing my work. And I was like, I'm actually doing my work. I'm also doing it at home because I don't have enough time to finish it at work, which is why I can't do this book on time.
Can I ask you a quick question about so for these movie books, like how many pages are we talking? Like creating curriculum for a movie?
It was a while ago. I can't fully remember, but it was like me and the other foreigner like split the book in half. I did half, she did half.
But it sounds like you have to add vocabulary, expressions. So you have to watch the movie and basically like beat by beat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Okay.
And like they had like split all the movie clips up into like 5 to 7 minute clips each. So it was a lot of work. Like it was a lot of like watching and rewatching just to make sure that I'm like catching vocabulary and phrases and everything. And then also while this meeting is going on, the owner is he had asked me in Korean, and at this point, like I do speak like a decent amount of Korean, but not enough to have like a full-on meeting about like serious stuff. So he asked me he's like, what's going on? So I started explaining to him in English, and he's like, no, in Korean. I was like, I can't speak Korean well enough to do that.
It's a power move.
Yeah. He would only ever talk to me using banmal. Like he never used like any sort of respectful terms with me whatsoever. He was also like answering phone calls in the middle of the meeting while we're talking about all of this is just a mess. And they're super angry at me. The director at one point gave me this like glare with like the most amount of hatred behind it that I've ever experienced in my life. And I'm just like getting heated. Like I'm just like hot because I'm so like anxious and like dumbfounded about what's going on.
It's almost like an interrogation or something.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. Yeah. And then the second that my coworker speaks up, everything settles down and becomes much more pleasant. And I have no idea, like that was within my like first month and a half there, and I just like don't understand. Also within that first month and a half, there were like 3 separate instances like where I started working there in the summer, and I am fat and hairy and I sweat like nobody's business. So I would show up to work in like a t-shirt, and then I'd put on a long sleeve shirt before the students come because we prepped for like 3 or 4 hours before the students got there.
Sure.
My head teacher told me that I wasn't allowed to show my tattoos around work. I wasn't allowed to smoke anywhere around the building. And if they caught me doing that again, then they were going to fire me. Like on 3 separate occasions, 3 separate instances, first time for each thing, I was warned that if I did this thing again, I would be fired within my first month.
Wait, you can't even smoke on the street or anything? Like you?
Yeah. And I was just like, okay, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Especially in like the afternoon when all of the children are still at school, and like we show up at 1:00. Like the kids are still in school; they're not anywhere close to the building.
Sure.
But so that was really frustrating, and it was just like a whole year of just like they were so mad at me. I think partially like the director didn't like how I looked, but I don't think she had any other options because I did have long hair still and I have a beard, and I don't think they were there for that, but just like constant battles of trying to like make sure that my rights were still there and that they weren't walking all over me. There's I actually even went to Seoul Global Center at one time for a consult with a lawyer when I took my contract in. Because of the summer intensives, I had been keeping track of the extra classes that I was teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And in the contract, we were told that it was 20,000 won per teaching period or something extra for over the limit of our classes. And so we and my coworker had all calculated it, and then we like printed it off and gave it to the director to show like how much time we had put in and how much money we were owed. And she freaked out and said that it was like we were like ripping her off. And I was like pointing out to my head teacher, I was like, this is what the contract says. It says 20,000 won per class hour. Classes are 40 minutes, but they were like trying to add like the 40 minutes plus 40 minutes to equal however many hours instead of like class periods.
Right.
And so I ended up going to the Global Center for a consult where they told me that the wording in the contract was too ambiguous because it said a teaching hour, not teaching period.
Oh,
and so
okay.
I didn't need to stand on. And so that was really frustrating. Yeah. The worst part of this job probably was towards the end of my contract. The last day of my contract was a Monday. And so on the Friday before, my head teacher, right before the students show up, says that he needs to talk with me before I go home and that it wouldn't take long, but it's going to be at the end of the day. And I am just like, we had like 4 hours before the students got here. I don't understand why we couldn't have talked about it then, but
yeah.
Okay. And they were also.
And this is on your last day, but they're waiting.
No,
I'm already.
This was the Friday before my last day.
Oh, the Friday before.
He read the book. Give the bad news at the end of the day.
No, so I actually was just like, I'm pretty sure they're going to try to tell me not to come into work on Monday. I'm pretty sure that's what this conversation is going to be about. And also that day, they had filmed me teaching some of the classes. They would regularly set up cameras, not pointed at me, but pointed at the students.
I see. Yeah.
But this day, they had the camera at the back of the room pointed at me. And one of the students was like, teacher, why is the camera here? And I was like, I didn't even notice it until a student brought it up. And I was like, I have no clue. So after that meeting, I talked to my head teacher. I was like, why am I being filmed? I'm not okay with this. Nobody told me about it. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I'll talk to the director. And found out later that they were filming me teaching so that they could train any new teachers coming in, which really fucking pissed me off because I hated working here. They treated me like shit the whole time. But because they didn't have any competent teachers there, they decided to film me without my permission. And I was like, I didn't ask for this. I want those videos deleted. I don't want my image used for this Hagwon whatsoever because it's been such a shit show.
Mm.
And then at the end of the night, my head teacher did end up confirming my suspicions and that they're like, you don't need to come into work on Monday because we're like starting a new term and you don't need to be there that day. And I'm just like, okay, am I still going to get my full severance? Am I still going to get my full paycheck? Because the contract says I work to this day. If you don't want me to come in on Monday, then I still expect my full severance and I expect my full paycheck.
Yeah.
Because if I wasn't going to get my full paycheck, they were going to cut it off on Friday, which means I would lose out on 3 days of pay instead of just like 1 day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, I will. He's like, I definitely think so that you will get your severance. And I was like, you definitely think so? Those don't work together. Those don't work together.
Yeah.
So I left and I was like, find that out for me. But even if my last day is today, I still need to come in on Monday to get my things because you're telling me right now at 10 p.m. I'm going out of town literally right now. So I don't have time to clean up because I'm leaving. So I will be back on Monday regardless to pick up all of my stuff. So I leave my job and I'm furiously texting. Luckily at this job, I had a really nice Korean coworker who he was very supportive and he understood the shit that we all went through. Yeah. And so I was like furiously texting him and I was like, they're basically firing me on my second to last day, which is super illegal. And Like, this is just super sketchy.
Yeah.
So my head teacher ends up messaging me and telling me that even if I come into work on Monday, I will not get my full pay, but I will still get my severance. Even if I show up on Monday, they're still not going to pay me. And I'm just like, nope, that's not okay. I will be there on Monday. I will be teaching classes and you will be paying me like the contract says.
Yep.
And he's like, oh no, like, he's like, no, like, let me call you. I was like, no, I'm out of town. Like, I'm not, no. Because I also like didn't want to talk to him on the phone because there's no way for me to record that while I'm talking to him on the phone.
Okay.
Is your head teacher a foreigner?
No, he was a Korean. I actually called him Stinky Teacher because he farted all the time and it was rank. It was terrible. Anyway, I had lots of for my coworkers. So he keeps trying to like schedule a time for me to call him, and I was like, no, I'm out of town this weekend. I'm not calling you. You can text me whatever you want to tell me. And also talking to the other Korean co-teacher who was like supportive and nice and helpful. So I'm relaying all of this to him. And then the next day he's messaging me, and he ended up calling the owner to ask like what's going on. And the owner had no clue about any of this. I'm very certain that my head teacher and, well, mostly the director, but my head teacher was the director's lapdog. So I know like that it all came from the director. I'm very certain that they were trying to not get me to come in on my last day so that they wouldn't have to pay me my severance and say that I like hadn't shown up to work, because the owner had no clue. And he told my friendly co-teacher that of course I'm coming to work on Monday and teaching. And then I showed up on my last day, and my stinky head teacher he didn't say a word to me because I had refused to talk to him over the weekend. So he just like flat out did not say anything to me.
Interesting. That's fascinating.
There was another moment of like maybe a couple months before the end of my contract. So my contract was 1 to 10 p.m., but they demanded that we be there at 10 minutes before our contract time. So they wanted us to be there at 12:50, which I had no problem with because I'm punctual to a fault. I'm always early, so it really wasn't that big of a deal. But the big problem was that all the classes and everything ended at 10, and then they sent the students into buses to be sent like to where their parents would pick them up. They kept trying to tell but the only people who would go down to take the students to the buses were the Korean teachers. And they had told us, the foreign teachers, that we had to stick around until all of the Korean teachers came back up. And then we would say goodbye to the director and go. But I got really sick of it because this commute. So I live in HBC, and this commute would take me over an hour with one way because of like subway times and bus times. And so it just took a really long time. If I didn't leave work immediately at 10 p.m., I would not catch my subway, and then I wouldn't get home until 11:30, which I had a big problem with.
Yeah.
So I would wait till all the students had left the building, and then I was gone. But for some reason, all of a sudden, this became a big problem with my head teacher, and he told me that I had to stick around until after they came back up. And I was just like, well, how long do you expect me to stick around? He's like, I don't know, 10 minutes. I was like, so you're making me be here 20 minutes longer than my contract hours. And those are 20 minutes that I'm not getting paid for. Which seems kind of trivial to like make a big stink about 20 minutes. But at that time, like I had zero control over anything at work. And this was the only thing that I could exert control over was my time. And so I kept telling my head teacher, I was like, if I don't leave at this time, I miss my subway. I get home at 11:30. I'm not okay with that. And he was like, well,
there's something to be said as well for like with 10 or 20 minutes, like it does seem really small, but I've had similar small issues. But as soon as you say like, oh yeah, that's okay, I don't care about that, then another time it's just like a little bit extra. It's like you have to set that limit.
Yes. I mean, this was also towards the end of my contract, but they had all of a sudden made it a big deal. And so I was like, and the only time I ever heard this phrase was like, don't you care about the camaraderie? Don't you care about your coworkers? Was when I was like making a stink about things that were not okay. But I found out later that they would go out to like chic lunches but they just wouldn't invite us because they didn't want us there. And so I had a huge, like, I'm just like, so you only say that when it benefits you. Because they were like pointing to my other coworkers, the other Korean teachers, like, well, it takes him over an hour to commute. I'm like, well, that's not my problem. Like, I'm sorry that he has to do that, but that doesn't affect me. That's not my problem. And none of the other Korean teachers understood why they were making us sit in the office and wait around while they took students to the buses, because we were literally doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I ended up having a meeting with the owner, who I fucking hated, but where they think this is going to be a conversation, but I'm like, this is not a conversation. This is me telling you that you can't do this. If you wanted me here at this time and to leave at this time, it should have been in the contract. These are my contract hours. This is what I'm doing. And one of my favorite laughable moments was when the director tells me, okay, fine, I guess we'll follow the contract, whatever problems might come from it. Like, he was threatening me with following the contract, which is what I was trying to get him to do.
Right.
And I looked at him and I was like, what problems do you expect to come from following the contract? And he was like, I don't know, I guess we'll see. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I mean, I want to follow the contract. I know the rules that are laid down in the contract. I don't foresee any problems, but okay, sure, threaten me with following the contract. That's fine.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because this has a lot to do with like what people expect of foreigners versus what they would expect out of like Korean coworkers.
Yeah, and that's another
Korean
thing.
work culture is really kind of this collectivistic idea of like, we stay later together, we do this later together. But we, coming from like a Western culture, an individualistic culture, we're like, this isn't in our contract. Like, we have rights, we have things that we want to be respected. And, you know, maybe a Korean, if a old school Korean was here, is like, you came to Korea, you should assimilate, you should adjust. But I don't know if that's a fair thing to say to us.
And that's another thing, though, is that like at that meeting about the time thing, he was like, this is Korea, this is not America. I was like, this is what I signed. And one of my biggest pet peeves about working in Korea, like, I love living here, I love working here, I've been here for 10 and a half years, like, it's like, this is my life, is that, like, of course I fully expect that I'm going to have to adjust the way that I do things as a foreigner living in a foreign country. I fully recognize that I'm going to have to bend over backwards and try to do things that are more acceptable to them, but there's only so much that I can do. There's only so, like, no matter how long I'm here, I'm never going to be fully Korean, and I shouldn't have to be, because they should, like, these companies that are hiring foreign teachers also need to recognize that they are hiring foreigners, and foreigners expect different things, and it's like, it needs to be a team effort of adjusting and figuring out things, instead of just expecting your employee to do everything 100% the way that a Korean was expected to do, when, like, we don't know those unspoken rules until, like, we're confronted with them. And like, that's like one of my biggest problems, is that, like, a lot of bosses at these Hagwons are unwilling to adjust or bend in any way, when, like, you have to, like, that you can't run a business with a bunch of foreigners who aren't Korean, who haven't been here their whole lives, and expect them to act in a way that you would expect a Korean employee to act.
And it is odd, like, exactly from what you're saying right now, when you establish some boundaries, you say, look, I'm going to establish some boundaries for myself, because it's all I know. This is what we do where I'm from, and the contract is the document in which the boundaries are established. And so so when those get stepped all over, even a little bit, you would think that if you've run a Hagwon long enough, that you might actually understand that that's a really fast way to annoy, piss off a foreign worker, is to step all over those, you know?
And that's another thing, though, too, is that, like, I find that Hagwons and owners find themselves in these situations where, like, they have, like, I'm very sure that by the end of my contract, they hated me because I didn't put up with any of their bullshit. But I'm pretty sure I was also the first person to ever voice any of that. Mm-hmm. So, like, another problem is that, like, we have all these, you hire a new teacher, you have all this big turnover. and the new teachers you hire don't want to necessarily raise a problem because they don't want to like shake the boat. And like, so making sure that like people who come in know their rights and know what's okay and what's not okay is extremely important, because these Hagwons end up getting away with things that they wouldn't get away with, that they shouldn't get away with. Like, they find themselves becoming comfortable with doing these things that are against the contract or against labor laws, but because nobody brings it up or threatens them or goes to the labor board about it, then they can just keep getting away with it.
I think there's also there's another layer to that too. Because like, I've been here for 13 years. I mean, we've all been here for ages, and I've never worked in Hagwons. I have plenty of friends that have. I know the culture. I mean, I think I know it by proximity, and I also know from years of teaching that, you know, teaching requires a lot of autonomy. Like, it's required not just by the teacher, but the business also needs to recognize that. So what does this mean? Well, it goes two ways. It means, one thing, teacher needs to be willing to go beyond maybe the black and white of the contract, but it also means that the employer can't just like abuse that. And we have kind of this difficulty with communication, cultural difference, language issues. And it's like, I feel like a lot of that gets lost. And it's like, hey, is this person just asking me to like, hey, do me a favor, I need you to like write this little report. I know it's like, you know, Friday night. Is it like that? Or is it like, oh, just give it to that son of a bitch, you know, he'll take care of it. You know, like, that line I think is so blurry. And then a lot of these Hagwons, I think they end up in a situation where they have to approach working with teachers like they're factory workers. And that's probably the most efficient and best way for the teacher as well, just to be like, look, I'm just going to go with what's on the contract, because that's all I can really, you know, that's all we can really agree on. So if you want me to do something, I want paper, I want it inked, and I want to sign.
Yeah. And I think there's also a difference between every once in a while asking for this like trivial favor versus like constantly just shitting on people who work for you.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah. And so how do you know how far to extend yourself is my point. Yeah, so exactly. in the corner of sympathy for the teacher, it's like, all right, I'll go the other way first. Like, from the owner's point of view, it's like, well, you're a teacher, man. You should be going beyond, like, you know, if it's like 2 seconds past the clock, come on, I mean, there's these students are humans, you know, you got to hang out. You got to go beyond. But on the other hand, from the teacher's perspective, how do you know like what those, when you're being pushed around, you don't know, like, it's kind of like what Jack was saying, like, you got to set those boundaries, but it's a hard choice to make. And I think for a lot of people, if you're coming here and you haven't taught before in any capacity, like professionally, and you're not familiar with, like, you know, it's not the same as, you know, being a line cook or, you know, whatever part-time job you might have had before you come in. I think a lot of students are coming here, right? That's why I make it sound like that. Which is a lot of like hourly work. I think it's really hard to approach.
Sorry. Go ahead, Jack.
I think there's a flip side. There's a devil's advocate position here too, is that I think I'll admit that I'm guilty of this too, of treating a job teaching at a Hagwon like being a line cook, where I roll in 10 seconds before my class starts, open the book. Hey, what unit are we teaching today? Oh, okay. Page 26.
Yeah, sure, Jack. But what I'm saying is, like, I'm saying the system almost demands that you behave that way.
You're right. That's true.
Because what in that system, from what I've heard, we talked about this on a different episode, a different teacher we interviewed. I was talking about how autonomy for teachers is one of the best tools for a teacher, like being able to create your own content for each individual class as you want, if you want, and then for each individual student as you're able to, if you want. Yeah. And the slapback on that was, no. I think Kev said it. At Hagwons, the whole point is like, this is the book, this is the program, this is what you're doing, check it out, don't mess with me.
Yeah, autonomy is great, but that's not Hagwons.
Yeah, so like, then what's the teacher supposed to expect? If that's what you're being told, it's like black and white.
But it's difficult too, because the the kind of employees, the kind of teachers that a Hagwon can attract with the money that they're willing to pay are fresh off the boat. They're green, and they don't necessarily have, like, if you were to throw me, like I said, I taught after school, I wouldn't have been able to do that off the bat. Like, it took like 5 years of experience of teaching, knowing what I like to do, to be able to pick books, right? But at the very least, what a Hagwon can do with a green teacher is try to give them trust them, right? Like my boss, I did a whole bunch of extra stuff for my first job because my boss trusted me. He made me feel a part of it and invested.
Yes.
Like I would organize parties and special events. I wasn't in my contract. I just wanted to do it because I wanted.
If we're being treated well,
I felt a part of it.
If we're being treated well, I'm much more willing to go outside of my contract.
There you go. Yeah.
And that's the thing with so many jobs, just in general. It really depends. It's give and take. Like, I'm willing to. I had my very first job working in a fast food restaurant in high school. Like, I did the shit jobs when the manager would call me and ask me to do these, because he would also help me out when I needed a day off. Right? It goes back and forth. Boss wants me to stay 10 minutes late occasionally. Cool. Yes. Can I also leave 10 minutes early occasionally? Sure. If you're willing to work with me, I'm willing to work with you. And I think
and building that relationship is tough, right, Kev? Like, think about your experience there working, you were younger. The boss there was probably a little bit older, but you're like younger. You were like a kid, basically,
right?
In a part-time job. So there's a little bit of stewardship, probably, and big brother, little brother type of thing, possibly. And it's the same culture, et cetera. Meanwhile, the way Nick describes it, that's common experience, I think, for a lot of Hagwon teachers. Like all the foreign teachers, on their Friday night, they're going over here. The Way Sheet crowd, that's all the Koreans over there. Like, and yet you're saying you want us to integrate. I mean, you want us to, collaborate and care about this. Well, some basics.
You want us to care about the team, but you don't care about us. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also then you have like linguistic language problems, and you have like culture problems. It's awkward. It's not comfortable to sometimes get together that way, and it's a mess.
Well, I also think that a Hagwon director that has been burned is one that has kind of switched their managerial approach to be a micromanager. It's like, I used to give them freedom, and then they just, they got drunk every Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night. They smell like alcohol. They,
But that's also what comes from hiring people who have no experience, hiring people who don't know what they're doing, hiring people who just want to teach in Korea because they know it's an easy gig and they can go out and get trashed anytime they want.
They see it as like a post-university spring break. Yeah. I was one of my coworkers was like that, and they were unparticipative. Like I was technically the head teacher at my first job the first week I got there by default. And this girl, she was just complaining. She was like, "This is much harder than I thought it would be. This is so terrible." And I'm like, "It's not. Trust me, this is not a terrible job." And then she was like, I'm going to midnight run. And I was like, well, first of all, you don't tell me that, because I like my boss. And if you're going to midnight run, you don't tell anyone. You just do it.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But then like, that's the kind of person that turns a potentially a good boss into a bad boss, is when you have people like that working for you.
Right.
You don't have trust.
Yeah. I think that's the key. And I don't know. Do you guys have any final comments or any words you guys would like to add here at the end of the podcast?
Just a reiteration to record every meeting you have, just in case.
Oh, that's great advice. Yeah, I didn't know that was actually legal to do that. Yeah. Okay.
I think, Nick, that's an interesting example. Like all of the things you said, like knowing the rules, knowing that you can record things, keeping everything on paper is always really good. Not because you're going to have to use it, but just in case.
Just in case. Yeah,
right.
Very
just in case.
Yeah, and things you normally wouldn't do back in the States. Like, he made a couple of really good points. What was the other thing Nick said? The pension.
Yeah,
like,
know your rights.
You can just call the pension office. It's like not a big deal. It's something you wouldn't do back home if you got a job. I mean, you wouldn't think of that. But here, why not just check it out? It takes 10 seconds. They pick up the line. Little things like this.
Yeah. Healthcare is a big one too, because there was a teacher that suffered an accident, thought that he was insured, come to find out he was not insured, and had accrued tens of thousands of dollars of medical debt. And so, you ever, when you're young, you think you're gonna, I don't need health insurance or whatever. No, man, that's your right. Health insurance, the pension,
and also know how much you're being taxed. Because because there are a lot of Hagwon jobs out here that will, even though they hire E2 workers, they will register their workers with the tax office as independent contractors, which is highly illegal.
And
that's
you will,
we've heard about that
get
before.
deported. You will be asked to leave.
Yeah, and it's not going to be.
It's
not going to be. Yeah, your boss is not going to be the one that like goes on the line for it. It's going to be you that goes on the line for that, for not like checking it. So
right.
like
and
and then you'll have to marry your girlfriend.
Yes,
it's a situation.
So ladies out there, if your man doesn't want to marry you,
report him to immigration.
Report him to immigration, and I don't know. That last piece
that'll
of
put a
advice
ring on
is
it.
Suspect, I think. Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday morning. I really appreciate it. Nick and Jake, it was a great talk. It was really fun. For our listeners out there, you guys know where to find us. You can go to thesoulpatch.com. You can stream the episodes right off of the website. You can go to the YouTube channel and you can listen to it there. If you could do us a solid, give us a review in Apple Podcasts, that will really help us out. And if you have the funds and the willingness to buy us a cup of coffee on our Patreon, that'll go right towards producing the show. And so we can
keeping us awake on Sunday mornings.
Keeping us awake on Sunday mornings, right, when we record. Other than that, we'll catch you next week on the Patch. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Have fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today. Nothing here.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The choir, man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine.
Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey, Bobby.
Let the bass go.
Call me an eater, call me an animal.